a reflection on height and self-acceptance. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you've looked in the mirror and wished to be different? Perhaps a few centimeters taller or shorter. Height is one of those characteristics we've carried with us since childhood, shaping our relationship with the world in ways we don't always perceive. Close your eyes for a moment and remember, when was the last time you really thought about your height? It might have been when taking a group photo, trying to reach something on a high shelf, or standing in a crowd. These small, everyday moments remind us of this characteristic that, whether we like it or not, accompanies us with every step we take. Today, I want to invite you on a reflective journey about the seemingly simple but profoundly complex question. Do you like your height? Or would you rather be taller? Or perhaps shorter? And more importantly, why does this question matter so much to so many people? The social meaning of height. To begin, let's acknowledge something important. Height is not just a physical measurement. It's loaded with cultural, social, and psychological meanings that vary drastically from one place to another, from one era to another. In many societies, especially in the West, height is associated with power, leadership, and attractiveness. It's no coincidence that most political leaders and CEOs of large companies are above average height. Studies show that taller people tend to earn slightly higher salaries. We're talking about a difference that can reach thousands of dollars per year. They are frequently seen as more trustworthy, more competent, more capable of leading. In romantic contexts, especially for men, height is often cited as a desirable attribute. How many times have you seen on dating apps the phrase, prefer someone over 5'11"? This preference is so common it has become almost a cliché, an automatic filter that many people apply without questioning where this desire comes from. But where does this valuation of height come from? Part of it is evolutionary. Our ancestors may have associated greater height with physical strength and protective capability. In primitive times, when survival depended on hunting, fighting, and protecting the group, it makes sense that height was seen as an advantage. A taller individual had greater reach, could spot dangers at a distance, intimidate potential threats. However, much of this is pure social construction. We live in a world that was literally designed for people of average stature. Supermarket shelves are positioned for those between 5'3" and 5'11". Airplane seats assume a standard leg length. The height of kitchen counters, work desks, ATMs, everything follows a standard that favors those within a certain height range. Think about it, even our linguistic expressions reveal this bias. We say look down on to express contempt, move up in life to talk about success, be small when we want to diminish someone. Language itself carries these embedded values that associate height with positivity and short stature with negativity. The daily challenges. For those outside this average, whether above or below, the daily experience can be quite different. Very tall people face practical challenges that average height people can't imagine. Finding clothes that fit properly becomes a treasure hunt. Pants always too short, sleeves that don't reach the wrists, shoes that need to be specially ordered. Fitting comfortably in cars and planes? Forget it. The legs simply have nowhere to go. Avoiding hitting your head on doors, chandeliers, and tree branches becomes a daily sport. And there's also the aspect of unsolicited attention. Very tall people frequently report being constantly approached with questions about their height, comments about basketball, requests to reach things, as if their stature was the only interesting thing about them. On the other hand, shorter people may encounter equally frustrating difficulties reaching objects on high shelves, always having to ask for help or carry a step stool. In the professional environment, many report the constant struggle to be taken seriously, to have their voice heard in meetings, to not be underestimated or treated condescendingly. And there are the comments. Oh, the constant comments. You're so tiny. Where's the rest of you? As if it were acceptable to make observations about someone's body just because the person is short. Imagine if we did the same with any other physical characteristic. The personal journey. But here's the crucial point that needs to be said. each person's relationship with their own height is unique and deeply personal. I know people who are 5'3" who walk through the world with unshakable confidence, occupying spaces with their presence and personality in a way that completely transcends any physical measurement. They enter a room and everyone notices, not because of height, but because of the energy they carry. And I also know people who are 5'11" or more who feel insecure, who wish they didn't stand out so much, who could go unnoticed in a crowd, who weren't always the tall person in any group, who envy the invisibility that sometimes comes with being within the average. Acceptance of one's own height is, in many ways, a journey of self-discovery. It often begins in childhood. I remember stories of people who were the shortest or tallest in their class, how this profoundly marked their school experiences. The shortest child who was always at the front of lines, who was called shorty by classmates, who could never reach the bar in physical education class. Or the teenager who grew too fast, surpassing all classmates at 12 years old, feeling awkward, out of place, as if their body didn't belong to them. How they were or weren't chosen for sports teams based purely on their stature. The short boy who was an excellent soccer player but was always overlooked because he lacked physical presence. How they dealt with nicknames and jokes that, although said in jest, left deep marks. These experiences shape our self-image in ways we carry into adulthood, often without even realizing it.
The gender dimension. There is also a gender dimension to this issue that we cannot ignore because it's fundamental to understanding the pressure different people feel. For men, there is considerable social pressure, almost overwhelming in some contexts, to be tall. Masculinity, in many cultures, is intimately associated with physical stature. Shorter men frequently report feeling they need to compensate for their height with other qualities: humor, intelligence, professional success, muscles, financial status, as if height were a deficit that needs to be balanced. In the world of relationships, many women's stated preference for taller men can create a real and painful source of insecurity. There are even studies showing that shorter men tend to be more financially successful, in part because they feel they need to work harder to prove their worth. This is, at the same time, a story of resilience and a tragedy, having to constantly prove you're worth something beyond centimeters on a ruler. For women, the issue is equally complex, but in a different and sometimes contradictory way. Very tall women may feel masculinized or outside the expected standard of femininity, which in many cultures still associates delicacy and femininity with being small, fragile, protected. Many tall women report difficulties finding partners who feel comfortable with their height, especially shorter partners who feel their masculinity threatened, or cautiously choosing not to wear high heels so as not to stand out even more, not to intimidate potential partners, not to be seen as too imposing. On the other hand, shorter women may be infantilized, treated as cute or adorable in a way that diminishes them. In the professional environment, they may face extra difficulties being taken seriously, being seen as competent leaders and not as eternally junior subordinates. The liberating truth. But here's a liberating truth that needs to be said out loud. Height is just one of countless characteristics that compose us. It doesn't define our intelligence, our character, our capacity to love or be loved, our creativity, our courage, our intrinsic value as human beings. When we begin to truly understand this, not just intellectually, saying I know this with our head, but emotionally, feeling it in our heart and gut, something fundamental changes in our relationship with our own body. Height stops being a sentence and becomes just another biographical detail. Think about the people you most admire in your life, the people who left deep marks on who you are today. Your favorite teachers, your mentors, your closest friends, the family members you respect. Can you remember their exact height? Probably not. You may not even know if they were tall, short, or average. What you remember, what was engraved in your memory, is how they made you feel. The wisdom they shared at the right times, the affection they showed in difficult moments, the example they gave through their actions, the way they looked at you, making you feel that you mattered, that you were seen, that you had value.
A person's presence in the world, that intangible thing that makes someone unforgettable, has much more to do with who they are, with the authenticity they bring, than with how many centimeters they measure from the sole of their feet to the top of their head. Moving forward. This doesn't mean denying that real challenges exist. It doesn't mean pretending that height-based discrimination doesn't exist. It does, and it's documented. It doesn't mean personal preferences don't matter. They matter, and people have a right to their preferences. It means acknowledging these realities with open eyes, validating difficult feelings and experiences, but refusing to let them define our worth or limit our possibilities. It means understanding that yes, the world can be unfair, but that we still have choices about how we respond to that unfairness. There's also a fascinating aspect about how our perception of our own height changes throughout life, as if it were a journey with different chapters. Children often want to grow up fast, see themselves as big, because being big is synonymous with being powerful, independent, capable of doing what adults do. Teenagers can be extremely self-conscious about their height, especially if they develop earlier or later than their peers. Being different at that age, whether too tall, too short, or developing at a different pace, can feel like the end of the world. Adolescence is when social comparison reaches its peak, when belonging to the group seems like a matter of life or death. In adulthood, some find peace with their stature, learning to accept and even celebrate what they once saw as a flaw. Others continue carrying old insecurities, wounds that never completely healed. And there are those who develop a complex relationship, days of acceptance alternating with days of dissatisfaction. The real question. And here comes an important reflection, perhaps the most important of all. How much of our desire to be taller or shorter comes genuinely from within, from an authentic desire of ours, and how much is the result of external messages we've internalized over the years? How many times do we wish to be different, not because we really want it from the bottom of our hearts, but because we've been told 1,000 times in 1,000 different ways that our current height isn't enough, isn't adequate, isn't right? This distinction is crucial. One thing is having a genuine personal preference. Something completely different is carrying the weight of social expectations and confusing it with our own desire. The beauty and wellness industry certainly capitalizes on these insecurities aggressively. There are special insoles to increase height, promising to instantly add 2 to 4 inches. Extremely invasive, painful, and expensive bone-lengthening surgeries where leg bones are literally broken and gradually lengthened, a process that can take months and cost tens of thousands of dollars. Miraculous exercises promising to stretch the body, supplements supposedly stimulating growth even after puberty, posture techniques claiming to add inches, an entire billion-dollar industry built on people's insecurity with their bodies. But the real question, the one that really matters, shouldn't be how can I change my height, but rather how can I cultivate a healthy, peaceful, and even loving relationship with the body I have? How can I stop warring with reality and start living fully within it? Body neutrality. This leads to a powerful and transformative concept. Body neutrality, unlike body positivity, which asks us to unconditionally love every aspect of our body, every inch, every imperfection, which can be not only unrealistic, but create another subtle form of pressure, suggests something gentler and more achievable. Body neutrality proposes that we can simply accept our body as it is, neither loving nor hating, but recognizing it as the vehicle that allows us to live our lives, experience the world, embrace those we love, do what we need to do. It's a pragmatic and liberating approach. My body doesn't need to be perfect to be functional and worthy of respect. Your height is simply your height. It's not good or bad in itself, not right or wrong, doesn't define whether you're better or worse than anyone. It's just a biological characteristic, like the color of your eyes, like the shape of your hands, like the timbre of your voice. And while you may have preferences about how you'd like to be, and it's okay to have these preferences, we don't need to pretend they don't exist. True peace, that deep peace that allows us to sleep peacefully and wake up without that weight, comes when you stop fighting reality and start working with what you have. This isn't passive resignation. It's not giving up or settling for less than you deserve. It's active liberation. It's a conscious choice to redirect your energy. When you stop spending mental and emotional energy wishing to be different, energy that is precious and finite, you free that energy to do things that really matter. to develop your unique skills and talents, to cultivate meaningful and deep relationships, to pursue your dreams and goals with total focus, to contribute to the world in unique ways that only you can because you are who you are with all your history and individuality. Imagine how much time and mental energy we spend comparing, wishing, lamenting. Imagine if we redirected all of that to create, build, connect, grow internally. Conclusion. So, returning to the initial question, do you like your height or would you rather be taller? The honest answer for many of us might be, it's complicated. We may have days when we're perfectly at peace with our stature and other days when we wish to be different, and that's completely human. The important thing is not to let this physical characteristic, over which we have so little control, become a barrier to living fully. Not to let it prevent us from applying for that job, starting that conversation, wearing that outfit, occupying the space we deserve in the world. Because in the end, a person's true height isn't measured in centimeters. It's measured by the courage to be authentic, by the depth of their compassion, by the breadth of their vision, by the strength of their character. And in these dimensions, we all have the potential to be truly giants.